Well, hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Jen, and this is called Eat Your Damn Food. And I'm here with Masha Sardari, and she is from Fearlessly Nourished. So, Masha, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to me to have this conversation. And we're really going to have a conversation about real recovery and hearing a little bit about even why you became a professional in this field of eating disorders. So, welcome. Anything you want to say just to be here and be present with anybody listening today?
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to share my story and have a discussion today. Recovery is a very real thing for so many people, and we want to continue to have conversations around it and be transparent about experiences and honest about what real recovery looks like. I think those conversations are so important to help people hold on to hope and see it as full recovery being absolutely fully possible.
Well, that is a great place to start because I'd love for you to share just a little bit, right? Like you chose, or like you said, you were chosen. It
Yeah.
feels like you were called to do
Mhm.
this work. And I know part of that really came out of your own personal experience. And I know you said you'd be willing to share something about that. And the thing that made the biggest difference in your own recovery, and when we were talking a little bit before that, I thought it was so important that message you were saying about building a life. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you can share a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I became a registered dietitian because of my own recovery journey. I had the gift of having people support me through my recovery, and in those times when my fear was great and my hope was low, they held that hope for me and encouraged me along the way through ups and downs. And I really felt that I wanted to be that hope holder for someone else,
Mm,
because it really does make such a difference when you can speak to someone who understands where you're at and
mm,
feeling heard and feeling safe to share maybe not so glamorous sides of the recovery process, and feeling understood and connected
mm,
to providers is so important in the process. So
mm,
um, I really felt that it was important for me to work on my side of things to
mm,
become someone that can support individuals in recovery. I also did really learn through the process that it was about building a life that was exciting and that I was willing to fight for.
mm,
That it wasn't about breaking up with the eating disorder or losing the eating disorder. It was about no longer needing it
mm,
and realizing that the life that I've built for myself in the process was worth so much more than the eating disorder would ever be able to
mm.
give or trick me into into believing
Right.
that I had clarity that life was so much freer without it, but it had to be a slow process of letting it fall away
Wow.
versus looking at it as a loss.
That's so beautiful. I like so much of what you shared. First of all, I love this idea of a hope holder,
Mhm.
and who doesn't need somebody to believe in them?
Yeah,
Sometimes we have people that come into our FAB space and, they've been struggling for a lot of years, or they've tried all different treatments. And it's like, really, is this really going to be different for me? Can I do this differently? And so, like, holding that hope, because I definitely have this stand that recovery is possible for everybody, no matter how long you've been struggling. And it's important, like you're saying, to have a team of people, to have those guides who really get it, who really understand, who really believe in you, even when like that road gets bumpy.
yeah,
And I love what you also said is that it's about creating a life for yourself and a life worth fighting for. Because, geez, that eating disorder will definitely try to keep you safe and
yeah.
tell you otherwise. So, having a life that you are really starting to vision, that makes you excited, that's delicious. And sometimes what I see with our clients is that they start creating this big life and they're starting to see there's no place for my eating disorder in this life I'm creating anymore. So this idea of like it does start, not that you're not doing the work, but it does start like sort of falling away a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I often see in clients is, they'll ask the question of, well, if I don't think about food, what am I going to think about? Like, what am I going to do with t free space in my mind?
Mhm.
And even almost having like a fear around that. And as they go through that recovery journey, realizing that as we have space, we can now put dreams in there. We can put in
Oh.
things that are so, so valuable to us. That's where connection lives, relationships, adventures, love, care, all of those things can fill that space
Mm,
now when the eating disorder was taking it all up.
mm. So beautiful. Yeah, I sometimes have had people say to me, my clients will be like, "Oh my gosh, Dr. Jen, it's quiet up there." Like I didn't know how much chatter I had going on all the time. And then it's like, "Oh my gosh, it's quiet." And like you're saying, what do I do with all that space? But like you're saying, "Oh my gosh, that's where we get to play and dream and imagine and have all these wonderful opportunities in life." So and at first, sometimes that space can be a little scary until we get used to that. Like, whoa, like now we, have this whole other way that we can live life. So I think the other thing I want to ask you is, we certainly know that life and recovery, it's never a straight line, right? There's always going to be for any of us these bumps in the road. And sometimes when there are those bumps, those challenges, those stressors, maybe even like sometimes good changes that are happening, right? Somebody moves or they start a new relationship, or maybe it's a new part of life. They're starting a graduate program or whatever it is. And it's very easy to sometimes want to go back to what's familiar. And
Yeah.
for those people that we're working with, that's really the eating disorder. So I like to sometimes talk to clients about going back to the basics, right? But sometimes it's like, oh gosh, I have to go back to like where I was. And I'm like, well, it's not exactly that. It's not like going back, but it is sometimes using that skill set that
Hmm.
really is very foundational.
Hmm.
So, and I know you've had some clients you've been talking to this week about these things, and I have too. So I guess I'm curious about this idea of like going back to the basics or your foundation to kind of really keep things stable.
Yeah, and I think that's where structure is really important because you're mentioning wanting to go back to what's familiar, right? So what if we just went back to structure that feels predictable, right? So we know what our day is going to look like, and we know when we're going to have our meals, when we're going to have our snacks. So that takes the overwhelm out of the picture somewhat. If we're going through so many things and so many changes, let's allow that to be what we're dealing with. And then food becomes more stable in the process versus now getting kind of carried into the chaos of what's else is going on, even if it's exciting, right? Kind of getting swept up with that energy.
Mhm.
So that we're not feeling like we're dividing our attention between, oh, how do I figure out my eating and how do I also do this overwhelming and exciting thing maybe? Can we simplify things for ourselves so
Mhm.
that we move through it? And it's not necessarily the idea of going backwards, it's using tools and things we've learned along the way in this scenario. So it's actually moving forward through this life stage versus allowing the eating disorder to actually pull us backwards by not by interfering in a way with whatever we're going through or taking advantage of the stress or the overwhelm to
Mhm.
kind of bring back some of those behaviors or actions that maybe are not constructive for
Mhm.
us.
It's awesome. I'm thinking also about myself. I'm in a new environment right now, and I'm loving my new environment, but I'm on a different time zone, and it's a different space, and it's a different climate. And I'm just sort of noticing for myself, right? It's like, okay, like, I'm trying to keep some of those rhythms, even like my sleeping rhythm,
Yeah.
because I know that grounds me, right? Same thing with food. It's like, okay, keep those rhythms that you know are going to stabilize you when everything else, even these wonderful new things, they can sometimes like, right, kind of destabilize us a little bit, not because they're negative things, sometimes they're positive, but it's still new. We're still adjusting. So I like this idea of like keeping those sort of foundations in place so then we can start, having kind of these experiences. And I think that maybe the last question I would ask you, Masha, is like sometimes during these times of change or and sometimes they're positive changes, sometimes they're not, sometimes you're going through something hard. But it's not always easy for people to admit they're having a hard time, or maybe some of the eating disorder thoughts or some behaviors are coming back, and to ask for help and to reach out for help. So maybe
Mhm.
you know that both personally, going through your own recovery and, doing this professional work with your clients. But what would you say to somebody who might be listening, who might be struggling and is kind of keeping the secret to themselves? Is there anything you would offer them about reaching out for help?
I think the real power of choosing recovery lives in bringing whatever we're struggling with into the light.
Mm,
Letting other people know that this is what we're dealing with so that we can see it more clearly and then we can also recruit others for help in the process. That is going to be the most helpful thing with moving forward. And the eating disorder, of course, it's going to want us to believe in the lie that we need to keep it closed, that if we tell other people, we're going to have judgment or whatever that fear is. And truly that's the belief that keeps us stuck in those behaviors or stuck in that in between space of not knowing what to do next. It's when we bring it into the light, when we're willing to have conversations about what's going on, that holds so much power and it hands it back to us
mm,
versus kind of fueling the eating disorder,
mm.
or increasing that temptation to go back to those old ways of looking at things.
It's great. So, Masha, if somebody wants to find you and they're wanting some light in their lives, I really hear how you are such a hope holder. And, I sometimes think as a professional, that is some of what I'm doing is like shining the flashlight of like, let's walk here, maybe not here. Like, right? It's like we're holding that flashlight. So, if somebody wants to find you, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram as Fearlessly Nourished, and I also have a website, same name, fearlesslynourished.com.
Mm,
I'm very easily found on Instagram. Feel free to send me a DM. I love to have conversations and encourage, and I think it's so important to have honest conversations in this space and
mm,
support each other as a community. And I'm so grateful to be part of the
mm,
recovery community. So it's never a nuisance. It's always exciting to hear from people. So
mm.
that would be the best space to start
That's
as well.
beautiful. I really genuinely hear your openness and your openness to share your story. I think there's a lot of power in that, right? You're modeling like what's possible in terms of recovery. And so I just really appreciate getting to know you even more today. And I think anybody who would find you, Masha, would be in very good hands. So thank you so much for being here and being a part of this. And I look forward to connecting again soon.
Me too. Thank you so much for the conversation and having me on